April 2008, my first ghost. I was on my prep period in getting a laboratory activity ready for my chemistry class's next lab. We were going to measure the number of calories released by a burning candle. I had done this lab every year since 2000, and I had prepared hundreds of labs in my career and never had any problems. On this day, however, I couldn't find my thermometers. They were not anywhere in my storage room, which measures 15 feet long and 5 feet wide. It remained locked at all times. I looked for 15 minutes and there was no thermometers anywhere. I kept the rack of thermometers in the cupboard, and had checked everywhere 3 times, and they simply weren't there. I shrugged my shoulders as if it were useless, and checked one more time. They weren't there. I turned around and saw the rack of thermometers on the lab card, sitting in plain sight where they had not been before. I was shocked and couldn't believe it. I thought back, questioning myself, and wrote it off as the beginning of Alzheimer's disease and went about my business. A few days later, at my house, I had put my clothes for the day in a pile on the bed and took a shower. When I got out, my boxer shorts were not in the pile. I meticulously went through the pile one piece of clothing at a time, and no boxer shorts were there. For some stupid reason, the idea ran through my mind to go check the living room and kitchen area, knowing damn well they weren't there but going to look anyways. When I scrolled through, I realized how ridiculous it was because I had put all the clothes in a pile just before jumping in the shower. There's no way they could be in the living room. So I grabbed a soda and headed back to the room. When I got there, I saw my boxer shorts laying on top of the clothes plain as day. I then remembered my thermometer incident and made a mental note, then let it go. I searched every room and closet and found nobody hiding. A few days later, I'm in the shower and get out to find my cigarette pack was not on top of my clothes where I knew I had placed it just minutes before. I had 2 ghost experiences earlier that week, and was aware of the ramifications missing in front of me. So I carefully moved each piece of clothing onto the bed, and I moved the chair they were placed on, and finally I crouched down and moved my hands over the floor to make sure there wasn't an invisible pack sitting there. There was nothing. I raised my head and said out loud, "I'm going to go to the living room and come right back." And I walked fast to the refrigerator, grabbed a soda and walked back to my room. The cigarettes were sitting right where I had moved my hands across the floor. I grabbed a butcher knife and proceeded to check every room. When I checked the bathroom door, slamming it all the way open to make sure nobody was behind it, I found something blocking it. My adrenaline jumped and I lunged in to stab, and found a beach ball was wedged between the door and wall. I checked the rest of the house and found nothing. I then believed in ghosts for the next following 5 years, when in June of 2013 I figured out the real reason behind my ghostly experiences. National security agents have an arsenal of technologies that they use to get their victims to believe in ghosts. I know this to be a fact, and I am 100% correct on this revelation. National security hides as ghosts, demons, and aliens. I lived through 5 years of their bullshit before I figured out exactly what was up. Fuck this country. I am well aware how deep their stalking program goes. It's unfortunate how innocent Americans get chewed up and spit out, while the true source of their downfall remains hidden and unknown. The reason I know my brother and my old roommate were responsible for my ghosts in April 2008 was because of what happened a month after I kicked them out. They came to get their stuff a full 30 days after kicking them out. The last thing that we could not find was some stupid picture, like for making Kool-Aid, and it was from the 99-cent store. We looked for that stupid picture for an hour, everywhere, and it wasn't there. I told them I would buy another one and bring it to them, pressing them to leave. Finally, they were about to leave, and Matt points and says, "There it is." And it was right in the middle of the table in plain sight. That's the kind of shit they do to let you know that they were the ones that did it. They only did this after I knew damn well that they were responsible for my ghosts, demons, and aliens. They want you to get mad and angry, which will make you react with violence, or drive you crazy. Your best option is to forgive your perpetrators no matter what. They are the ones that are truly mentally ill, and you should do your best to forgive them. This is best for you and your own well-being. The Ghost Machine. It was around or near June 19th, and I was at a local liquor store around 11 p.m. I saw a young man with tats on his neck and I asked him if he knew somebody looking for some bomb weed. He said, "I've been looking for hours and everyone is out." I was desperate for customers and gave him directions to my house, and met him there 5 minutes later. He rolled up on his bike and I let him in. I weighed an eighth and let him check it out. As I handed him the bag, he looked me in the eye and said, "Is this house haunted?" He was dead serious, and I thought it was amusing. I smiled with all due seriousness and replied, "Why, yes it is. How did you figure it out so fast?" He said, "Because I saw shadows moving across your wall, and there's no reason the shadows should be moving at all." He was right, and he paid $25 and left, and never came back. After he left, I took a close look around. There was not a single leaf moving because there was no wind. No motion was happening and every light was still. Steve was right, there was no reason that any shadows should be moving. So I looked very carefully. I saw for several minutes what looked like shadowy stick figures moving back and forth across the brick wall in my backyard. I watched for a while and wondered what the hell could be causing these shadows to move. Eventually I looked up and saw a round metal object hovering just above the tall fig tree in my neighbor's yard. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. I saw very clearly a round metal ball about 5 feet in diameter with one large red light in its center. The red light was about 1 foot in diameter. Around it were about 12 smaller lights, each about a few inches in diameter, and they were red and yellow and blinking. The shadows moved as the lights blinked on and off, projecting tree limb shadows down onto the brick wall. I know what I saw, and I have no doubt. I went out to my backyard through my sliding glass door to take pictures, and it was gone. National security has flying machines that add to their ghostly arsenal of gang stalking. Psychiatrists and doctors, the truth of it all. I already told you the story of my last doctor visit, so let me tell you about a few psychiatrist visits before I discuss my insights of truth. I have seen 4 different psychiatrists, and they are all the same. Not one of them heard me. Each one diagnosed me within 5 minutes and without any scientific evidence or tests performed in any way, shape, or form. Only one gave me the task of remembering 5 objects, then asking me to recall them after I answered a few distraction questions, like, what does the term E equals MC squared mean to you? I answered, it's the amount of energy that a physical quantity of mass can be converted into energy to make other objects move or absorb within themselves to cause physical or chemical changes within that object. If you have the mass expressed in kilograms in c, the speed of light, expressed as 300 million meters per second, then when you square the value of c and multiply that by the kilograms, you get the number of joules of energy that the object will turn into if it gets totally converted into energy. Then after a few more distracting questions, he asked what the objects were that he had mentioned before. A pen, a watch, a boot, a hat and a ring. That was the only test performed, and I passed it easily. I requested a brain scan from each one, but each had their reason for not granting my request. The real reason is they are a tool of the NSA mind control gang stalking program that selectively eliminates its opposition, and declaring a person mentally ill is one way for them to discredit a voice by putting a label on you that says, there is something wrong with this person's brain, when in reality the only thing wrong is that you have been victimized by covert operations within our national security agency. The damning evidence in each diagnosis was the harassing voices of my stalkers. These voices come from many sources. One source is directly from a stalker's vocal cords through the air and into your ear. For weeks on end I would go outside and literally hear people yelling at me from far away. I asked my son one day, do you hear those people yelling? He listened and said, yeah. He couldn't tell what they were saying and assured me that they weren't yelling at me. But they were personally harassing me, talking shit. So the next day or the one after that, I snuck outside and crawled out to and crouched down behind my brick fence. I waited patiently and finally heard a perpetrator yelling, Dave Pope sucks dick. And I jumped up to look, and I saw this fucker straight through my neighbor's backyard and across the street, standing on the sidewalk. This cowardly stalker had his hands cupped around his mouth to project his voice and aim it right towards my house. I yelled at him, I'll beat your fucking ass, you cowardly little bitch. He looked and found where I was, and he was startled when he made eye contact with me. Within 1 moment he went into training mode and did what any stalker does once they are caught. He began acting normal and denied the previous moments took place. In this case, my stalker just began walking normally down the sidewalk. When I caught one in a restaurant, she suddenly moved her cupped hands from her face and dropped her fork, and when I caught this old white bitch doing it at a softball game, she quickly removed her hands from her mouth and quietly resumed watching the game. My psychiatrists either ignored my stories or asked, is it possible you were imagining things? Before they moved on to the next line of bullshit. I swear, I have not met a smart psychiatrist yet and I'm thinking that they don't allow the smart ones to get their license. I think they become NSA gang stalked and never reach graduation. I'm almost serious, it would make perfect sense. And not one psychiatrist could explain why earplugs and sound-dampening headphones eliminated the sounds altogether and gave me peaceful silence. Hell, my current psychiatrist that I am depending on to fill out my disability forms can't even remember what prescription he gave me, and he asks the same questions every week. I'm beginning to think he was pulled out of retirement and set up in that office just to help gang stalk me. I'm serious, this is the kind of shit that our national security agency does. They have undermined my life at every turn. Propping up some doctor in an office that will do their bidding is not too difficult a task for them to pull off. The history, records, etc. can all be acquired by our NSA spies. I need to change doctors. And every single doctor has the same diagnosis for the same reason. They automatically, every single one of them, claim that I am psychotic because I am hearing voices. This is made official without any evidence whatsoever except my claim that my brother stalks me. My true claims that earplugs and noise-dampening headsets eliminate the voices are always dismissed and not given a second glance. But they adamantly stand behind their diagnosis that I am psychotic from my claims that my brother stalks me. His harassing voice stops when the batteries go dead, about a month or two after they're put in. You can trust psychiatrists and doctors. As far as I am concerned, they have no integrity. I trust doctors about as much as I trust police.